What happens when one of Hollywood's most cherished actors goes head-to-head with late-night television's most controversial host? What unfolds when Danny DeVito sits down with Jimmy Kimmel for what was meant to be a light-hearted promotional interview turns into one of the most explosive confrontations in talk show history? This isn't just another celebrity disagreement. It's a clear example of how quickly mutual respect can collapse when clashing egos meet under the glare of studio lights. Before diving into this remarkable story, be sure to hit the subscribe button and leave a comment below. Because what happens when two entertainment heavyweights collide will make you question everything you thought you knew about professionalism in Hollywood. The stage was primed for disaster. From the instant Danny DeVito stepped onto the Jimmy Kimmel live set, which should have been a routine appearance to promote his latest project, rapidly turned into a tense situation that would erupt across social media within hours. The seasoned actor, known for decades of professionalism and sharp wit, found himself opposite a host whose tendency to push boundaries was about to go too far. As the cameras rolled and the audience settled in, expecting the usual playful banter between DeVito and Kimmel, no one anticipated they were about to witness a confrontation intense enough to dominate entertainment headlines for weeks. The opening exchanges appeared normal. DeVito took his seat beside Kimmel's desk with his familiar charm, waving to the enthusiastic crowd that clearly adored him. "Danny DeVito, everybody," Kimmel announced with his signature smirk. Yet, something felt off. Those familiar with Kimmel's hosting style could detect an unusual edge in his voice, a barely concealed hostility beneath his forced smile. DeVito, ever professional, settled into his chair, ready for what he assumed would be another standard late-night interview promoting his work. The tension surfaced almost immediately when Kimmel opened with what sounded like a harmless question about DeVito's age and recent projects. "So Danny, you're what, 79 now? That's getting up there. Are you still able to keep up with the younger actors on set, or do they have to slow things down for you?" The question landed awkwardly. The audience's laughter was hesitant and forced. DeVito's expression shifted subtly, but attentive viewers could catch the flicker of irritation crossing his face. "Well, Jimmy, I think experience counts for something in this business. I've been doing this since before you were born, and I'm still here because I know how to do the job right." His reply was calm, but it carried a clear warning that Kimmel seemed intent on ignoring. Kimmel pushed forward, either unaware of or deliberately dismissing the growing tension. Right. But Hollywood's changed a lot. These days, it's all about social media and staying relevant. Do you even understand how Twitter works? Or do you have someone handle that for you?" The patronizing tone was now impossible to miss, and several audience members shifted uncomfortably. DeVito's jaw visibly tightened. "I understand plenty about staying relevant, Jimmy. The difference is, I do it through my work, not by taking cheap shots at guests who come on my show." The emphasis on my show was deliberate and sharp, a poignant reminder of whose career carried greater longevity and respect. But Kimmel, perhaps emboldened by his home field advantage or too invested in his confrontational approach to retreat, escalated further. "Oh, come on, Danny. Don't be so sensitive. This is comedy. Can't you take a joke anymore? Or has age made you too fragile for a little ribbing?" The word fragile lingered in the air like a provocation, and the tension in the studio thickened. DeVito leaned forward, his voice dropping into a quieter, more serious tone that demanded attention. "There's a difference between comedy and disrespect, son. I've been in this business long enough to know the difference. And right now, you're crossing a line." The use of son was especially pointed, asserting not just age, but a hierarchy of experience and earned respect that Kimmel appeared to be eroding. By now, the studio audience had fallen noticeably silent, sensing that the interview had gone far off course. This was no longer the light-hearted exchange viewers expected from a celebrity appearance. It was raw, tense, and deeply uncomfortable, with an atmosphere so charged it could be felt even by those watching from home. As the commercial break neared, What had begun as a routine interview had already deteriorated into something far more serious and confrontational, laying the groundwork for an escalation that was about to spiral completely out of control. When the cameras rolled again after the break, any chance of salvaging the interview had vanished. Kimmel returned with an even more aggressive posture, as if the brief intermission had only strengthened his resolve to push DeVito further. The veteran actor sat stiffly in his chair, his usual good humor replaced by a hard, unmistakable resolve that anyone who knew him would recognize as a warning. "We're back with Danny DeVito," Kimmel announced, his voice carrying a mocking undertone that prompted several crew members to exchange uneasy glances. "Danny, during the break, you seemed a little upset. Are you having trouble keeping up with the pace of live television these days?" The question was delivered with calculated cruelty, leaving no doubt about Kimmel's intentions. DeVito's response was immediate and sharp. "Jimmy, I've been doing live television since you were in diapers. The only thing I'm having trouble with is understanding why you think attacking your guests is entertainment." His voice carried decades of authority, earned by surviving and thriving in an industry notorious for chewing people up. But Kimmel appeared energized by the confrontation and pushed even harder. "Look, I get it. You're from a different generation. Maybe the fast-paced world of modern comedy just isn't for you anymore. Have you considered retirement? I mean, when was your last really successful project?" The studio dropped into stunned silence as Kimmel crossed yet another line of basic professional courtesy. DeVito's eyes flashed with genuine anger. "My last successful project. Let me tell you something about success, kid. Success isn't measured by how many people you insult on television. It's measured by how many people respect you when the cameras stop rolling. And right now, I'm wondering if anyone in this building respects you at all." The accusation landed squarely, and for the first time, Kimmel's composure faltered. His forced smile wavered as he realized DeVito wasn't going to back down or play along. "So now you're questioning my credibility. That's rich, coming from someone who peaked in the 80s. Peaked in the 80s. DeVito repeated, his voice rising with indignation. "I've had a successful career spanning 6 decades. I've directed, produced, and acted in films people still watch and love today. What have you done besides sit behind this desk and tear people down?" The challenge was direct and devastating, striking at the core of Kimmel's insecurities about his own legacy. The audience was completely silent now, covering their mouths in shock at witnessing such an unprecedented collapse of talk show decorum. This was no longer entertainment. It was a raw confrontation between two men with fundamentally different ideas of professionalism. Kimmel, perhaps realizing he was losing control but too deep into his antagonistic approach to retreat, made his most damaging mistake yet. "Well, Danny, maybe if you weren't so sensitive about your height, your age, and your fading relevance, you could take a joke like the old days. Remember when comedians used to be tough?" The remark about DeVito's height, a topic he had handled with grace and humor throughout his career, was the final straw. DeVito stood up from his chair, his compact frame projecting more authority and dignity than Kimmel had shown all night. "That's enough," he said, his voice slicing through the studio. "I've been in this business long enough to know the difference between comedy and cruelty, and what you're doing right now is cruelty." Kimmel, finally realizing he had gone too far, attempted a weak retreat. "Come on, Danny, sit down. We're just having fun here." But his voice lacked conviction, and everyone in the studio could feel that the damage was irreversible. "Fun?" DeVito replied, his voice heavy with contempt. "This is your idea of fun, insulting guests who come on your show in good faith. Let me tell you what's not fun: watching someone destroy their own reputation in real time." The words hung in the air like a prophecy already coming true. The tension had reached a point of no return, and everyone in the studio knew something explosive was about to happen. What happened next would be replayed endlessly across social media and news outlets for weeks. DeVito, still standing beside his chair, looked straight into the camera with the kind of gravity that only comes from decades of earned respect in Hollywood. "Ladies and gentlemen," he said, addressing both the studio audience and viewers at home, "you're witnessing something that should never happen on television or anywhere else. A host who has forgotten the basic principles of respect and decency." Kimmel, realizing DeVito was effectively taking control of his own show, desperately tried to regain it. "Danny, please, let's just move on to your movie. We can talk about your new project." But the panic in his voice revealed that he knew the veteran actor wasn't about to let this go or pretend everything was fine. "My new project." DeVito turned back toward Kimmel, his expression a mix of disappointment and disgust. "You want to talk about my work now, after spending the last 15 minutes trying to humiliate me on national television? That's not how this works. Jimmy, you don't get to attack someone's character and then casually change the subject when it becomes inconvenient for you." The studio audience was completely absorbed, some pulling out their phones to record what was clearly becoming a historic television moment. Crew members exchanged uncertain looks, unsure whether to cut to commercial or allow the unprecedented confrontation to continue live on air. Kimmel made another frantic attempt to salvage the situation, but only worsened it. "Look, if you can't handle a little comedy roasting, maybe late-night television isn't the right place for you anymore. This is what we do here. We have fun with our guests." His words dripped with condescension, missing the irony that he was still insulting DeVito while claiming to move on. DeVito's response was swift and devastating. "Comedy roasting? Is that what you call attacking someone's age, physical appearance, and career? Let me explain something about comedy, since you seem confused. Comedy punches up, not down. Comedy brings people together. It doesn't tear them apart. What you've been doing tonight isn't comedy, it's bullying with an audience." The words struck Kimmel like physical blows, and for the first time all evening, he appeared genuinely speechless. An uncomfortable silence followed as he struggled to find a response that wouldn't further damage him or escalate the situation beyond repair. DeVito continued, his voice gaining strength and moral authority with every sentence. "I've worked with some of the greatest comedians of all time. People who understood that making others laugh doesn't require making someone feel small. Real comedy builds people up. It finds humor in shared human experiences. It doesn't exploit someone's trust when they come on your show." The audience began murmuring among themselves as sentiment clearly shifted toward DeVito. Several people voiced agreement, and the energy in the room changed from uneasy tension to something resembling righteous outrage on behalf of the veteran actor. Kimmel, sensing he was losing not just the argument, but possibly his credibility with his own audience, made one final, catastrophic attempt to regain control. "Danny, I think you're being a little dramatic. Maybe if you weren't so insecure about getting older in Hollywood, you wouldn't take this so personally. I'm just saying what everyone's thinking. But maybe it's time for some of the older generation to step aside and make room for fresh talent." The studio erupted not with laughter, but with gasps and shocked reactions. Even members of the band looked uncomfortable, some shaking their heads in disapproval. The comment was so tone-deaf and cruel that it seemed to surprise even Kimmel himself as soon as he said it. DeVito's face darkened with an anger that was no longer merely personal, basically professional. "Fresh talent," he repeated quietly. "Let me tell you about fresh talent, Jimmy. Fresh talent respects those who came before them. Fresh talent understands that this industry is built on the shoulders of the people who paved the way. What you're showing tonight isn't fresh talent. It's ignorance, arrogance, and a complete lack of class." The confrontation had now gone far beyond a simple disagreement between host and guest. It had become a collision between two entirely different philosophies of respect, professionalism, and the entertainment industry itself. DeVito representing old-school dignity, and Kimmel embodying everything wrong with modern celebrity culture. DeVito stood still for a moment, allowing Kimmel's latest insult to linger in the air like toxic smoke. The studio fell into an almost reverent silence, as though everyone present understood they were witnessing a moment that would be discussed for years. When DeVito finally spoke, his voice carried the weight of decades of experience and the moral authority that comes from choosing the high road when others choose the gutter. "You know what, Jimmy?" he said, calm yet unmistakably final. "I came here tonight to talk about my work, to connect with people who might enjoy what I do, and to have a pleasant conversation. Instead, I've been subjected to 15 minutes of personal attacks disguised as entertainment. That's not entertainment. That's just sad." Kimmel, perhaps at last grasping the scale of his mistakes, made one final, desperate attempt to recover. "Danny, come on. Let's start over. We got off on the wrong foot here." But his words rang hollow and insincere, far too late to undo the damage he had systematically inflicted throughout the interview. DeVito slowly shook his head, a gesture that conveyed both disappointment and pity. "Start over, Jimmy. You can't unring a bell. You can't take back what you've shown everyone tonight about who you really are when the cameras are rolling. This isn't a bad night for you. This is who you've chosen to be." The veteran actor began removing his microphone, his movements deliberate and dignified. "I've been doing this for over 50 years, he continued, addressing both Kimmel and the audience. "I've worked with legends. I've seen careers rise and fall, and I've learned that how you treat people, especially when you have power over them, defines who you are as a human being." As DeVito handed his microphone to a stunned production assistant, he delivered what would become the most quoted line of the entire confrontation. "Jimmy, you have a platform that reaches millions of people every night. You could use it to lift people up, to bring joy, to celebrate the things that make us human. Instead, you've chosen to use it to tear people down. That's not just unprofessional. It's a waste of an incredible opportunity." The studio audience began to applaud spontaneously, starting with scattered claps that quickly grew into sustained applause. Several people rose to their feet, forming a standing ovation clearly directed at DeVito rather than the show itself. Kimmel sat frozen behind his desk, watching his own audience reject his behavior in real time. DeVito acknowledged the applause with a gracious nod, then turned to face Kimmel one final time. "I hope you figure out what kind of host and what kind of person you want to be, but I won't be part of this anymore." He gestured broadly at the studio, encompassing not just the physical space, but everything it represented in that moment. With that, Danny DeVito walked off the Jimmy Kimmel live stage with more dignity and class than the host had shown all evening. He moved steadily toward the exit, posture straight and head held high. Every inch the consummate professional that decades in Hollywood had proven him to be. The cameras captured every step of his departure, and the silence that followed was deafening. Kimmel remained alone at his desk, facing an audience that had just watched him dismantle his own credibility. The crew scrambled to fill the remaining time, but nothing could erase what had just transpired. As DeVito disappeared through the studio doors, his footsteps echoing in the sudden quiet, it was clear that something fundamental had shifted. The veteran actor hadn't merely left a talk show. He had delivered a masterclass in maintaining dignity under attack and standing up for basic human decency in an industry that too often forgets both. The incident soon dominated social media, with clips of DeVito's moral stand going viral and Kimmel's behavior widely condemned. Industry veterans rallied to DeVito's defense, sharing their own stories of his professionalism and kindness over the decades. Meanwhile, Kimmel faced a wave of criticism that ultimately led to sharp declines in his show's ratings and raise serious questions about his future as a host. In the end, the confrontation stood as a powerful reminder of the importance of respect and professionalism in the entertainment industry, with Danny DeVito emerging as an unexpected yet compelling voice for dignity and decency in Hollywood.